Welcome to my YouTube channel, IELTS A Plus Hub. So guys, if you like our video, don't forget to subscribe our channel. So after a long time, here is the new listening practice test with new format. All the best.
You will hear a telephone conversation about booking a venue for a private event. You have 30 seconds to look at questions 1 to 10.
This is George and Dragon. How may I help?
Hi, I'm calling to inquire about your upstairs venue. I'm interested in booking it for a private event, and I was wondering if I could ask a few questions.
Yes, of course. Just give me a second, please. So, before we start, could I please get a name and phone number?
Yes, my name is Clara Carlton.
Carly, could you spell that for me, please?
Sure, it's Carleton.
And the phone number?
Well, I'm going to give you my work number as I'm booking the venue for a work event.
Right.
So it's 020-8322-1479.
Great. So, what would you like to know?
Well, I saw on your website that the price can be from £20 per hour, so I would like to get an exact quote if possible.
Well, the price depends on the type of event, the date, and the number of people, and whether we will be providing food as well.
Oh, it's for a retirement party for one of my colleagues.
Okay. And for which date is that?
Well, we were thinking next Tuesday, the 31st of May.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, but the venue's already booked that day. We're free on Monday and Wednesday, if that would suit you.
Well, Wednesday's no good, because the gentleman who's retiring will be gone by then. But Monday works just as fine.
Great. You'll get a cheaper rate for Monday, too.
Excellent.
And how many people will there be?
Well, at the moment it's supposed to be 16, but it might go up to 17. We're waiting for one of our co-workers to confirm whether they'll be available that night or not.
The boardroom in the venue only has space for 15 people, I'm afraid. We've got enough standing room for about 15 extra people. Is that all right?
Oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. We won't be sitting down much anyway. Would it be possible to provide 2 extra chairs just in case, though?
Yes, of course.
Great.
And finally, will you be needing us to provide food as well?
Well, we'll be bringing the cake, but I imagine that yes, we will be ordering some food as well. What are your options for nibbles?
Well, we've got quite a vast selection depending on which type of menu you're interested in. We've got meat-based tapas, as well as some vegetarian and vegan options, and we've also got some sharers.
Well, as far as I know, none of us are vegans, so I don't think we'll be needing that. Some meat-based and vegetarian options would be great, though.
Would you like me to talk you through them, or...?
Well, you do have the menu online, right?
Yeah, you can find it on our website. The only thing is that a couple of options have been removed and replaced with new ones, and we haven't had the chance to update it online yet.
Okay, let me just pull it up on my screen. Just a second. All right.
So, in the meat-based food section, the dishes that have been discontinued are the mini fajitas and the pulled pork bruschetta.
Oh, that's a shame. The pulled pork bruschetta looked really nice.
Yeah, but we've replaced them with 2 new really popular dishes. We've got a trio of sliders, which is 3 mini burgers, made one each with chicken, beef, and pulled pork, and we've also got ham and cheese croquettes.
Oh, that sounds nice. So I'll have 7 of the mini burgers then. I see you've also got vegetarian croquettes. Are they still in the menu?
Yeah, we've got the vegetable croquette and the potato croquette.
And how many croquettes are there in each dish?
The vegetable one is 5, the potato one is 4.
Okay, so I'll have 2 of the vegetable croquettes, and I'll also have 2 of the ham and cheese ones, please.
Great. Anything else?
Well, I don't know. It all looks so nice. What would you recommend?
Well, what I would recommend is the simmered squid. It's slow cooked in wine and served with potatoes. I'd also recommend the hummus platters. Our chef actually makes his own hummus, and it's one of our most popular sharers. And of course, all of our salads, especially the Caesar salad, we're famous for them.
Right. So I'll go for 5 hummus platters. Or should I get 6? No. You know what? 5 is just fine. I won't be having any of the squid. It sounds lovely, but I'm just not sure how popular it would be with my colleagues.
Yeah, fair enough.
And finally, 1 Caesar salad and 1 vegetarian, the goat's cheese one.
Great. And just for the final question, for how many hours would you be booking the venue?
Well, we'd be arriving straight after work, so somewhere around 7 p.m, and I'd expect we'd need it until at least 9 p.m, maybe even 10 p.m, so...
So 3 hours?
Well, probably, but let's make it 4 just in case.
Right. Great. So just give me a minute and I'll get back to you with a quote, all right?
Yes, of course.
Hi. So I spoke to my manager, and the total with the food and a drink starter for 17 people would come up to £318.95.
Okay.
But he'd be happy to offer you a 5% discount, which would bring the total down to just £303. And that includes a pint of any beer, a glass of wine, or a fizzy drink for each person.
Okay, that sounds reasonable enough. Let's go for it.
Right. So I would just need a deposit of...
You'll hear a guide talking to a group of tourists about Buckingham Palace. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17.
Now, of course, Buckingham Palace is instantly recognisable to millions of people around the world. As we pass the palace, I'd like to tell you a few things about the history of this famous building. We think the first house was built here around 1624. In 1674, that house burned down and a new one was built, called Arlington House after its owner, the first Earl of Arlington. Then, in 1703, the first Duke of Buckingham changed the design of the house and the name. It was then known as Buckingham House. The building we see in front of us now has undergone many changes since it was first built. The east front, which is the part we see from the road, was added as part of the work done by Queen Victoria and was completed in 1850. But the palace has remained pretty much unchanged for nearly 100 years. The last major changes to the structure were made by King George V, who, in 1913, had the east front redesigned as a backdrop to the large memorial to Queen Victoria, which had just been placed outside the palace gates. Since then, only minor changes have been made. I should point out, though, that the palace was bombed 7 times during the Second World War, most seriously in 1940, when the palace's chapel was destroyed. Today, of course, it is the home of the royal family, but that wasn't always the case, although they did own most of the land it was built on. It was George IV who turned it into a palace, doubling its size when he became king in 1820. He had inherited it from his father, King George III, who, in 1761, had become the first royal owner of the building, though it was still not used as the home of the royal family, just as a private home for Queen Charlotte. It was known as the Queen's House at that time. King William IV finished the work after his brother, George IV, died. But King William never moved into the palace. In fact, in 1834, he offered it as a new home for Parliament after the Houses of Parliament were destroyed by fire. The offer was not accepted, though, and in 1837, when Victoria became Queen, the house became the main royal residence in London. However, Victoria and her husband, Prince Albert, found the house too small, so they carried out building work to further enlarge it. This included building the east front, which I've already mentioned as the part we are looking at now. Victoria was also responsible for moving the Marble Arch, built as a part of the palace itself in the 1820s, to where it stands today, separate from the palace on the corner of Hyde Park. For 20 years or so, the palace was often the setting for huge banquets, dances, and musical performances. This period lasted until Prince Albert died in 1861, after which Victoria spent very little time there, and the palace was hardly ever used.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 18 to 20.
When Victoria died in 1901, Edward VII became king. He was responsible for most of the decoration inside that exists today, and the dark days of the later part of Victoria's reign were fairly quickly forgotten as the palace came back to life. The palace has been in continual use by the British royal family ever since. A lot of people ask me if they can visit the palace. One way is if you're lucky enough to be invited to one of the 3 garden parties usually held every year. As many as 8,000 people attend these, although most of them do not get to meet any members of the royal family, and they don't see much of the inside of the palace. The garden is, however, quite spectacular, and it is the largest private garden in London, with an artificial lake, 30 different species of bird, and over 350 different wild flowers, some of which are extremely rare. Inside the palace, there are 240 bedrooms, 92 offices, and 78 bathrooms. There are also 19 staterooms, which are used for official engagements and ceremonies. Members of the public are only allowed to visit the staterooms, and then only in August or September when the monarch is not there. It's worth it, though, because there's a lot to see in the staterooms, including examples of some of the world's best art with works by Rembrandt, Rubens, and Canaletto. The tour, which lasts up to 2.5 hours, ends in the garden, where you can see more of the outside of the palace not visible from the road.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
You will hear a conversation about waste between a tutor and a student. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 23. Listen carefully to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 21 to 23.
Well, we've been looking at the issue of waste this term, and as you know, it's a huge area to research. Now, Hannah, just to recap on our last session, we identified a range of sources of waste. Can we just run through these very briefly before we make a start?
Yes, I've got a note of them here. We've got waste from industry, commerce, quarrying and construction, and then, of course, there's household bins and litter.
Great. Now, you were going to focus on industrial waste, weren't you? How's the research going?
Well, actually, I decided to go with household waste in the end and focus on food. I've been looking at exactly what we throw out and how much. Now, maybe this won't come as much of a surprise to you, but I was really amazed at just how much food we throw away in the UK. We throw away over 7 million tonnes of food every single year. 7.2 million to be exact.
That's quite right. In the latest survey, it's been estimated that we're wasting 1/3 of the food we buy.
Exactly. That's like 1 in every 3 bags of food shopping going straight into the bin. I think the worst thing about it is that more than half of this is food we could actually have eaten. So to give you some examples, things like unopened pots of yoghurt, whole chickens. Yes, people actually throw out whole chickens.
Now you have some time to look at questions 24 to 30. Now listen to the rest of the conversation and answer questions 24 to 30.
Now, have you got any figures to support this? It's important to include these in your final assignment.
Yes, I've got a note of them somewhere. Yes, here they are. Let's start with yoghurts. Now, 1.3 million of them go straight in the bin, and 5,500 whole chickens. Oh, and I've got another example. Bread. An amazing 7 million slices of bread are completely wasted too.
OK, you've got some solid figures there. And don't forget to explore the reasons why we throw out food we haven't even opened. One interesting point worth making here is that, basically, we often completely forget about what we've bought. So we stick the box of eggs in the fridge and our packets of biscuits at the back of the cupboard, and they just lie there, completely unused. And on the subject of eggs, you might be shocked to learn that we throw away 0.7 million of them every single day, and the same amount of packets of biscuits.
I think that people need to think more about how they are storing and using the food they buy.
That's a good point. What do you think is the problem there? Do we all need to change our attitude to food?
Definitely. Part of the problem is that we've come to expect our food to look uniform and, well, perfect. So, we want our apples to be green all over and to be a certain shape and size. This means the farmers, and then we as consumers, end up throwing away perfectly good food just because it has a blemish or a mark. What's wrong with a green apple that has some red colour on it too? What's wrong with a tomato that has a slightly strange shape? But that kind of attitude may explain why there is so much waste. In fact, these are exactly the foods we waste most of. We throw out far more of those than we do bakery items like cakes and biscuits. And just to give you some idea of quantities, we're throwing out 5.1 million whole potatoes, 4.4 million whole apples, and 2.8 million whole tomatoes on a daily basis. And then there are the sell-by and use-by dates. They encourage us to throw away food long before it goes off.
Thanks, Hannah. You've highlighted an interesting point, that waste is very much a social issue. OK, let's leave it there. We can look at the issue of initiatives to reduce waste next.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
You will hear a talk on hydroelectric power. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40. Welcome to our series on renewable resources. The topic today is hydropower. As you most probably know, hydro means water, so we are talking about using water to generate electricity. Of course, there are many ways to generate electricity, but hydropower is important to the community. Firstly and obviously because it's renewable. The Earth's hydrologic cycle of constant evaporation and transpiration provides a continual supply of water from rainfall and snowmelt. The second point to consider is its efficiency. Hydropower plants are able to convert approximately 90% of the energy from the falling water into electric energy, whereas many fossil-fueled plants lose more than half of the energy content of their fuel by way of waste heat and gases. For this reason, they are very efficient. Hydropower is also clean. It doesn't emit harmful gases that contribute to air pollution, acid rain, and global warming. No trucks, trains, or pipelines are needed to bring fuel to the site, and there's no noise pollution either. Furthermore, hydropower plant machinery is fairly simple and runs at slow speeds, which makes it reliable and durable. And hydropower units are flexible also. They have the ability to start quickly and adjust rapidly to changes in demand for electricity, thus enabling them to meet peak loads. But this also allows them to serve as reserve capacity and bring more stability to the power system overall. The dams that provide hydroelectric power also have other uses, such as navigation, flood damage reduction, water supply, recreation, irrigation, and low-flow augmentation, but it's not the purpose of this talk to go into those details. How do the hydropower plants work? Well, a dam is built across a river, which captures water to form a reservoir and raises the water level to create head. Think of head as the vertical distance that the water falls as it passes through the dam. In other words, the difference in water level between the reservoir behind the dam and the river below. Water from the reservoir flows through an intake gate into a penstock. This is a kind of narrow channel which leads to the turbine below. The force of the water causes the turbine to rotate rapidly, which in turn drives the generator to spin and produce electricity. The electricity is carried the long distances from the powerhouse to substations on the outskirts of cities via power lines. Can you build a hydropower unit on any river? Well, no. Just having water in a river isn't enough. A good dam site must have enough stream flow as well as enough head. A fast-flowing river on the plains is probably not suitable because a dam couldn't be built high enough to provide the head needed for efficient production of electricity. On the other hand, dams in arid high country may have plenty of head but insufficient stream flow. The perfect spot for a hydropower plant is where the right combination of stream flow and head exists. What about the environment? Surely the construction of large dams has an environmental impact. Well, yes it does. Certainly dams and reservoirs are built to improve the lives of people living in towns, farming communities and cities. But there must be a balance between development and preserving the natural environment. Needless to say, the natural river environment is changed, which leads to changes in river ecology and aquatic habitat. Sometimes, for example, dissolved oxygen levels below dams get so low in summer that there is a negative impact on aquatic life. These levels can be improved, however, by using special aerating turbines and/or injecting oxygen directly into the stream flow. In order to protect and improve the habitat for endangered and other species of birds, fish and water life, there needs to be a thorough review of operating plans to see if a better balance can be achieved. Hydropower plant design and operation must not only meet the needs of consumers for electricity, but work hand in hand with agencies whose concern is for the fish and wildlife, water quality and water supply. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Please subscribe this channel and help this channel to grow more, and don't forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications of recent videos.